Korean Mafia boss agreed to one last blind date. The black girl who showed up changed his life forever part 2. If Nia thought facing down armed gangsters was stressful, it was nothing compared to sitting in Mrs. Choi's living room while Min Jae's mother circled her like a designer-clad shark evaluating prey. So, Mrs. Choi said, pouring tea with the precision of a surgeon, "You are a principal." "Vice principal," Nia corrected, accepting the cup and immediately burning her tongue because the universe hated her. "I work with high school students in Atlanta." "Ah, so you're used to dealing with children who make bad choices." Mrs. Choi's eyes flickered to Min Jae, who was sitting ramrod straight on the couch like a defendant awaiting sentencing. "This will be useful." "Mother, I'm just saying you have experience with rehabilitation. My son, for example, still has not learned to call his mother more than once a week. This is a bad choice." Nia bit back a laugh. Min Jae, the man who'd stared down a rival gang leader 3 days ago without flinching, looked like he wanted the expensive hardwood floor to swallow him whole. "Also," Mrs. Choi continued, settling into her chair with the authority of a queen addressing her court, "he tells me you threatened Park Hwang with social media. This is very creative. I approve." "You approve?" Min Jae's voice cracked slightly. "Mother, she walked into a warehouse full of armed men, and she survived because she is smart. Unlike you, who is planning to negotiate with a man who respects only violence." Mrs. Choi turned back to Nia with something that might have been a smile. "Tell me, Nia Sissa, what are your intentions with my son?" Nia had faced this question before, from parents of students she'd suspended, from her own family about Trevor, the creative entrepreneur, from her therapist about her commitment issues. But never from a 4'11" former lawyer whose son ran a criminal empire. "Honestly, I'm figuring it out as I go." Nia met Mrs. Choi's eyes directly. "I came here for Korean barbecue and a vacation. Your son was supposed to be a 30-minute obligation, so you'd stop bothering me. Instead, he turned out to be..." She glanced at Min Jae, who was watching her with an expression that made her chest tight. "Complicated. Interesting. Worth the jet lag." "This is good answer," Mrs. Choi declared. "Not too romantic, not too casual. Realistic. I like realistic." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Now, you will stay for dinner. I am making galbi jim, Min Jae's favorite." "Mother, we have plans. You have no plans. June told me." "Also, June is coming to dinner too. He is like second son to me, and he never brings anyone to meet me. So I must feed him before he wastes away from loneliness." As if summoned by his name, June appeared in the doorway looking panicked. "Mrs. Choi, I told you that information in confidence. Confidence is for lawyers and priests. I am retired from one and not qualified for the other. Go wash your hands. Dinner in 20 minutes. June looked at Min Jae with an expression that clearly said, "Boss, your mother's scarier than any gang leader we've ever faced." Min Jae just nodded because that was an objective fact. The dinner was chaos in the best possible way. Mrs. Choi had apparently invited half the neighborhood. Min Jae's aunt, 2 cousins, and an elderly woman named Mrs. Park who'd known Min Jae since he was this tall and had no problem telling embarrassing childhood stories while he slowly died inside. "He used to cry at movies," Mrs. Park announced, spearing a piece of radish kimchi. "Any movie with a dog, even the happy ones." "I was 7, he was 12, Mrs. Park corrected, sobbing at Marley and me like his soul was leaving his body." Nia was crying from laughing, actually crying, while Min Jae's neck turned red beneath his tattoos. June was filming the whole thing on his phone, clearly saving it for blackmail purposes. "Oh," Mrs. Choi suddenly exclaimed, as if struck by divine inspiration. "Nia SSI, what about children? You want children?" The entire table went silent. Even Mrs. Park stopped chewing. Nia, who'd been mid-sip of soju, carefully set down her glass. "We've known each other for a week, Mrs. Choi." "Yes, but biology does not wait for slow romance." "You're 31, yes? Still good time, but better to plan ahead." "Mother, I will literally pay you to stop talking. You already pay me. I manage your legitimate businesses, remember? The ones that are not crime." Mrs. Choi turned back to Nia, undeterred. "I'm just saying, you seem like you would make strong children. Good genetics. Smart. And my son clearly needs someone to keep him from making stupid decisions. I'm sitting right here. Min Jae said weakly. Yes, and you are being very quiet, which means you're not disagreeing. Mrs. Choi looked deeply satisfied with herself. This is progress. Nia caught Min Jae's eye across the table. He looked mortified, exhausted, and somehow younger than she'd ever seen him. Stripped of the crime boss persona, just a man enduring his mother's well-intentioned torture. She felt something warm bloom in her chest, dangerous and wonderful. Mrs. Choi, Nia said carefully, I appreciate your enthusiasm. But maybe we could table the grandchildren discussion until at least date number 10. This is fair. Mrs. Choi nodded approvingly. But after date 10, we discuss seriously. Mother, also, I am thinking spring wedding. Cherry blossoms. Very romantic, very photogenic. June choked on his rice. Min Jae looked like he was calculating how difficult it would be to fake both their deaths and start new lives in Argentina. Nia just laughed because this chaotic, overwhelming, completely insane family dinner was somehow exactly what she'd been missing in her carefully controlled Atlanta life. The noise, the warmth, the sense of belonging to something messy and real and human. Later, after dinner, after Mrs. Choi had packed them enough leftovers to feed a small army, after June had been sent home with his own container and a lecture about eating more vegetables, Min Jae walked Nia to his car. Soul stretched out around them, glittering and alive. I'm sorry, he said quietly. My mother is intense. Your mother is amazing, Nia corrected. Terrifying, yes. Boundary challenged, absolutely. But she loves you so much it's practically radiating off her. She embarrassed me in front of you. Baby, I've had parents threaten to sue me because I suspended their kid for bringing vodka to school. Your mother asking about grandchildren is mild. Nia stopped walking, turned to face him. Besides, it's kind of cute. Watching you squirm. Cute. Min Jae repeated flatly. Very cute. Like watching a mob boss get defeated by a 4'11" woman with a wedding Pinterest board. Despite himself, Min Jae smiled. That real smile she'd gotten addicted to extracting from him. You're enjoying this. Immensely. He pulled her closer, right there on the Soul Street, and Nia felt her breath catch. His hands settled on her waist, warm through her jacket, and when he looked at her, his eyes held something that looked dangerously close to forever. So, he said softly, date 10. That's when we discussed children. That's when your mother stops pretending to be subtle about discussing children. She's never been subtle a day in her life. Clearly genetic, Nia said, but she was smiling, leaning into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her palms. Min Jae kissed her then, slow, careful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he held on too tight. It was nothing like the quick, stolen kisses they'd shared over the past week. This was a promise, a question, a leap off a cliff they were both taking together. When it finally pulled apart, Nia was dizzy and Min Jae looked dazed, like he'd just survived something. So, she whispered, your place or mine? Mine is closer. Then drive fast, crime boss, before your mother calls with more questions. As they drove through Seoul, Nia thought about the chain of events that had led here. A breakup, a random matchmaking app, a mother's determination, and her own reckless decision to get on that plane. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you didn't plan for. Sometimes love showed up wearing a burgundy suit and neck tattoos, surrounded by danger, and all you could do was hold on and enjoy the ride. You won't believe what happens next. Make sure to follow for the next chapter and let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing you all join the drama. Nia woke up to 3 things. Sunshine streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the smell of coffee, and a deeply uncomfortable realization that she'd slept with a Korean crime lord in his penthouse that looked like it had been decorated by someone who thought warmth was a weakness. She sat up, pulling the sheet around herself, and surveyed Min Jae's bedroom. Black silk sheets, of course, minimalist furniture, naturally, and exactly 0 personal touches except for a single framed photo on the nightstand. Young Min Jae with his father, both unsmiling, looking like they were about to negotiate a hostile takeover. You're awake. She turned to find Min Jae in the doorway, wearing nothing but black sweatpants and holding 2 coffee mugs. His tattoos looked even more dramatic in the morning light, the dragon wrapping around his torso, Korean characters she couldn't read, but that probably said something intense like death before dishonor, or I have trust issues. Your apartment looks like Patrick Bateman's, Nia said, accepting the coffee. Where's the personality? The color? The evidence that a human lives here. Min Jae sat on the edge of the bed, looking genuinely confused. This is a very expensive apartment. This is a very expensive hotel room. There's a difference. She sipped the coffee, perfect annoyingly, and gestured around. You have no plants, no books, no random junk that makes a place feel lived in. Just minimalist depression. I have books. Where? In my office. Organized by subject. That's psychopath behavior, Min Jae. He looked so offended that Nia laughed, nearly spilling her coffee. I'm joking. Mostly. But seriously, you're getting you some throw pillows. I don't need throw pillows. Everyone needs throw pillows. It's a scientific fact. Before Min Jae could argue further, his phone erupted with sound. Not a ring, but full orchestral music that suggested either someone had died or his mother was calling. He checked the screen, and his expression shifted to pure dread. It's mother. Answer it. Absolutely not. Min Jae, too late. The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Then Nia's phone started ringing. Then, impossibly, the apartment's landline, which she hadn't even known existed, began screaming to life. Does your mother have every phone number in Seoul? Nia asked, genuinely impressed. Min Jae answered his phone with the energy of a man facing execution. Mother. Even from across the bed, Nia could hear Mrs. Choi's voice, rapid-fire Korean that sounded both excited and accusatory. Min Jae's responses were mostly variations of yes and I understand and mother please. Finally, he hung up, looking like he'd aged 10 years. So, Nia prompted, she knows you're here. How could she possibly? June told her. Why would June? Because June is a traitor and I'm demoting him to parking lot security. Min Jae ran a hand through his hair, which only made him look more devastatingly attractive, which was unfair. She's on her way, with food, and apparently wedding magazines. We are not engaged. Try telling her that. 20 minutes later, barely enough time for Nia to shower and put on one of Min Jae's shirts because her dress from last night was definitely not day after appropriate. Mrs. Choi arrived with enough food to feed a small village and the energy of a general planning military strategy. Nia SSI. She swept in without waiting for an invitation, followed by June carrying 3 bags and looking deeply apologetic. You are here. This is good. I brought breakfast. Also these. She pulled out a stack of magazines. Modern Bride, Soul Wedding, and this one is called Pinterest, but physical. Very useful. Mrs. Choi, Nia started, trying to find words that wouldn't offend this tiny force of nature. We're not planning yet. Yes, I know. This is pre-planning. Very important step. She began unpacking containers, Pajeon, kimchi jjigae, rice banchan, and what looked like an entire roasted fish. Juna, set the table. Min Jae, why are you standing there like a statue? Help! Min Jae caught Nia's eye with an expression that clearly said, this is my life now. This is our life now. There is no escape. June was trying not to smile. Boss, should I call your assistant about rescheduling your meetings? What meetings? The ones you definitely have with definitely real business people about definitely legal activities. June, I will actually demote you. You can't. I know where too many bodies are buried. Metaphorically speaking. Mostly, Mrs. Choi had taken over Min Jae's kitchen with the efficiency of an invading army, somehow producing a full Korean breakfast spread in under 10 minutes. She directed everyone to the dining table with the authority of someone who'd never been told no in her life and wouldn't start accepting it now. Yes, Mrs. Choi said, sitting down with her own coffee. I must ask. My son was a gentleman last night, yes? Nia choked on her Pajeon. Min Jae looked like he wanted to dissolve in a vapor. June was openly laughing now, no longer even pretending to hide it. Mother, that is inappropriate. I am his mother. Nothing is inappropriate. I changed his diapers. Mrs. Choi turned back to Nia expectantly. So, gentlemen, Nia decided that if she was going to be interrogated by her maybe boyfriend's mother about their sex life over breakfast, she might as well own it. Very much a gentleman. Mrs. Choi, you raised him well. Mrs. Choi beamed like Nia had just told her she'd won the lottery. Good. This is very good. My late husband, he was also a gentleman. Well, mostly. Sometimes he forgot, but I reminded him. She patted Nia's hand. You must train them young. Like puppies. I'm literally right here, Min Jae said weakly. Yes, and you should be thanking me for teaching you manners. Mrs. Choi pulled out her phone. Now, I have made a preliminary guest list. Only 300 people. 300? This is small wedding by Korean standards. Your father, rest his soul, wanted big wedding. 800 people. I compromised because I love you. June was actually crying from suppressed laughter now, tears streaming down his face. Nia looked at Min Jae, this dangerous, powerful man who commanded respect through fear and reputation, being absolutely demolished by his tiny mother's wedding planning enthusiasm. And she thought, yeah, I could get used to this. If this story is sweeting you, tap follow real quick. And let me know your country. Where are you watching from? The problem with dating a crime boss, Nia discovered, was that meet my friends meant something entirely different than it did in Atlanta. In Atlanta, it meant brunch with her teacher friends, mimosas, and complaints about standardized testing. In Seoul, apparently, it meant being escorted to an underground gambling den by June at 11 p.m. on a Thursday, while Min Jae handled business that he refused to elaborate on. This is kidnapping, Nia said as June led her down a staircase that looked like it led to either a secret club or a murder basement. You know that, right? Boss's orders, June replied cheerfully. He said, and I quote, take her somewhere she can meet the team before mother invites them all to a wedding that doesn't exist yet. That's actually thoughtful. Boss has his moments. Also, he threatened to send me to Busan again if anything happened to you, so I'm highly motivated to keep you alive. The door at the bottom opened into a space that defied Nia's expectations. Instead of a dingy, illegal casino, it was more like an upscale lounge. Leather booths, ambient lighting, and a bar that looked like it served drinks that cost more than her monthly car payment. About 20 people occupied the space, all of whom stopped talking the moment she entered. 20 pairs of eyes, all assessing her, all clearly wondering why their boss's second-in-command had brought an American woman to their private space. Everyone, June announced with the energy of a game show host. This is Nia. Boss is, he looked at her helplessly. Girlfriend sounds presumptuous, Nia said. Date number 8 sounds sad. Let's go with the person his mother is trying to marry him off to. The silence held for exactly 3 seconds before someone in the back started laughing. Then someone else. Then the whole room erupted, tension dissolving like sugar in water. A woman emerged from the crowd. Late 20s, full sleeve tattoos, and an undercut that Nia immediately envied. I'm Hannah, she said in perfect English. I run logistics, which is code for I make sure these idiots don't accidentally start gang wars through poor communication. That seems like a full-time job. You have no idea. Hannah guided her to the bar. So, you're the one who threatened Park Hwang with social media? Word travels fast. Word travels at the speed of June's group chat, which is very fast. Hannah ordered them both drinks, something pink and deceptively strong. Half the underworld thinks you're insane. The other half wants to hire you for PR. An older man approached, 60s, scarred face, kind eyes. I'm Mr. Yang. I've worked for the Biko clan since Min Jae's father recruited me 30 years ago. He studied Nia with an expression that reminded her of her own father, protective, assessing, slightly amused. You make the boss smile. I haven't seen that since before his father died. Nia felt something warm bloom in her chest. He makes it difficult sometimes. He makes it difficult always, Mr. Yang corrected. But he's a good man, better than he thinks he is. Over the next hour, Nia met the crew. There was Rookie Kim, who wasn't actually a rookie, but had made one mistake 5 years ago and would apparently never live it down. There was Fingers, whose nickname had a disturbing origin story everyone refused to elaborate on. There was Mrs. Song, a 60-year-old woman who ran their money laundering operation and also brought homemade cookies to meetings. You remind me of my daughter, Mrs. Song said, offering Nia a cookie that was absolutely delicious and definitely shouldn't exist in a criminal organization. Strong backbone. Smart mouth. Good for Min Jae. He needs someone who doesn't take his brooding seriously. Does everyone in Seoul know about his brooding? Everyone in Seoul, parts of Busan, and at least 3 Yakuza families in Tokyo, Hannah confirmed. It's kind of his brand. The door burst open and Min Jae strode in, looking dangerous and annoyed in equal measure. His eyes scanned the room, landed on Nia at the bar surrounded by his crew, and something in his expression softened. You brought her here? He asked June. You told me to. I said introduce her to the team, not bring her to the gambling den. This is where the team is. June looked genuinely confused. Where else would they be? Church. Min Jae pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture Nia was learning meant he was reconsidering all his life choices. Then he walked over, positioning himself slightly in front of her in a protective stance that was probably instinctive. Everyone behaving? He asked the room at large. Boss, we're delightful, Hannah said. Nia's been telling us about American high schools. Did you know teenagers bring guns to class and everyone just accepts it? That's oversimplifying a complex, systemic issue, Nia started. But yes, Nia confirmed. It's terrible. I've done 17 lockdown drills this year. The room went quiet in a different way. Heavy. Understanding. You deal with that, Mr. Yang said slowly. And you thought our world was dangerous? Oh, your world is definitely dangerous. But it's honest about it. American schools pretend everything's fine while installing metal detectors and training teachers to identify threats. Nia took a long sip of her drink. At least here, everyone knows what they're signing up for. Min Jae's hand found hers under the bar, squeezing gently. A private gesture in a room full of people who respected him enough to pretend not to notice. She fits, Mrs. Song announced to the room. I approve. June, tell Mrs. Choi. Mrs. Choi already knows, June said. She knows everything. I'm pretty sure she has this place bugged. She definitely has this place bugged, Hannah confirmed. We found 3 last month. Min Jae looked heavenward, probably praying for patience or planning his mother's gentle but firm relocation to a country without extradition treaties. Nia just laughed because this absolutely chaotic, totally illegal, weirdly wholesome found family was somehow exactly where she belonged. So, she said to the room, who wants to teach me Korean curse words? For educational purposes. The cheer that went up was deafening. Min Jae knew, watching Nia bond with his crew over soju and inappropriate language lessons, that he was absolutely, irreversibly done for. And for the first time in his life, that felt like winning. This plot is getting hotter, right? Make sure you follow, so you stay ahead. And please tell me, where are you watching from today? Nia had survived exactly 12 days in Seoul without incident, which in retrospect should have been her first warning that the universe was getting ready to deliver a cosmic smackdown. She was at Myeongdong Market, surrounded by tourists and sheet mask vendors, video calling her best friend Keisha back in Atlanta. Min Jae had offered bodyguards 3 times, but Nia had refused because she was not about to become that person who couldn't buy face masks without armed escorts. Girl, you're dating a whole crime boss, Keisha was saying through the phone, her face pixelated but her judgment crystal clear. A crime boss, Nia, with tattoos and a murder history, alleged murder history, Nia corrected, examining a sheet mask that promised to make her glow like K-pop star. And you refused security? That's not independence, that's stupidity. That's when Nia felt the hand on her arm. Not aggressive, almost gentle, but insistent enough that she turned, expecting a vendor or lost tourist. Instead, she found a man in his 30s, ordinary looking except for his eyes, cold, calculating, wrong. He said something in Korean she didn't understand, but the universal language of "you're coming with me" transcended linguistic barriers. Nia's vice principal instincts kicked in immediately. She dealt with enough aggressive parents and escalating situations to recognize danger wearing a pleasant mask. I don't know you, she said clearly, loudly in English. Creating witnesses. Making a scene. Standard de-escalation protocol that worked on angry teenagers and, hopefully, kidnapping attempts. The man's grip tightened. He said something else, sharper this time, pulling her toward a side alley. That's when Nia remembered the self-defense class she'd taken after a particularly bad parent-teacher conference had gotten physical. She also remembered that the instructor had been 5'0" and had repeatedly said, "Go for the vulnerable parts and run." So Nia stomped on his instep with her full weight, jerked her arm free, and screamed. Not a movie scream, but the kind of primal yell she used to break up cafeteria fights. Help! Someone help me! The market erupted into chaos. Tourists scattered. Vendors emerged from stalls. The man lunged for her again, and Nia did something she'd never done in her life. She swung her purse, heavy, full of the collected debris of 2 weeks in Seoul, directly at his face. It connected with a satisfying thud. He stumbled. She ran. Nia made it approximately 15 feet before 2 more men appeared, blocking her path. Her heart was jackhammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. This wasn't a school fight. This wasn't breaking up teenagers. This was real, dangerous, and she was alone. Except she wasn't. June materialized out of literally nowhere. Later, she'd learned he'd been following her at a distance because Min Jae had insisted despite her protests. Moving with efficiency that suggested violence was a language he spoke fluently. One man went down immediately. The second barely got his hands up before June dropped him with a strike, so fast Nia's eyes couldn't track it. The third man, her original attacker, pulled a knife. Time did that weird thing where it slowed down and sped up simultaneously. Nia saw the blade, saw June calculating distance, saw his shoppers screaming and running. Then she heard tires screeching in Min Jae's voice, raw with something that sounded like fear. Nia. He was out of the car before it fully stopped, and the expression on his face, rage mixed with terror, mixed with something primal, made Nia understand why people feared him. This wasn't the man who smiled at his mother's dinner table. This was the crime lord who'd built an empire on reputation and violence. The man with the knife saw Min Jae and ran. Smart choice. Min Jae reached Nia in 3 strides, his hands immediately checking her for injuries, his eyes scanning her face with an intensity that made her chest tight. Are you hurt? Did he? His voice cracked, actual emotion bleeding through the careful control he always maintained. I'm okay, Nia managed, though her hands were shaking. June got here. I'm okay. Min Jae pulled her against his chest, his heart pounding so hard she could feel it through his shirt. His arms wrapped around her like he could physically shield her from everything wrong in the world, and Nia felt hot tears sliding down her face. Not from fear, though that was there, but from the overwhelming realization of how much this mattered. How much she mattered to him. I told you, Min Jae said in her hair, his voice rough. I told you to take security. I know. I told you this world was dangerous. I know. I told you. His voice broke completely. I can't lose you. I can't. I just found you and I can't. Nia pulled back enough to see his face. The terrifying crime boss was crying. Actual tears tracking down his face, cutting through the careful mask he showed the world. Hey, she said softly, cupping his face. I'm here. I'm okay. June saved me. Your weird surveillance state paranoia saved me. This is not funny. It's a little funny. In a traumatic, ill-processed this in therapy later kind of way. Min Jae made a sound between a laugh and a sob, pulling her close again. Around them, June was coordinating cleanup with a phone call. Market vendors were returning to normalcy, and Seoul kept spinning like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Nia had looked at real danger and survived. And Min Jae had shown her the part of himself he kept locked away, the part that felt deeply, loved completely, and would burn the world down to keep her safe. We're getting you a bodyguard, he said finally, his voice steadier but still holding an edge of steel. Okay. And you're not going anywhere alone. Okay. And I'm calling my mother because she predicted this, and I'll never hear the end of it if I don't tell her she was right. That made Nia laugh. Real laughter that shook loose some of the fear still clinging to her bones. Your mother's going to be insufferable about this. My mother is always insufferable. It's her natural state. Min Jae pulled back, studying her face like he was memorizing it. I love you. The words hung in the air between them, unexpected and perfect and terrifying. You're telling me this now? After I almost got kidnapped? That's your timing. I'm telling you this now because I almost lost you and I realized I've loved you since you walked into that restaurant and insulted my tie. His thumb traced her cheekbone, gentle despite the violence still humming through him. I love you, Nia Thompson. Your chaos and your courage and your complete inability to follow reasonable security protocols. Nia felt more tears coming, but these were different. Better. I love you too, she whispered. Even though you're dramatic and overprotective and your apartment needs throw pillows. Min Jae kissed her then, right there in Myeongdong Market, in front of June and confused tourists and at least 3 security cameras that his crew would definitely use for blackmail later. And Nia kissed him back, tasting salt and relief and the promise of something real. Min Jae had orchestrated 3 major territory acquisitions, neutralized 2 rival gangs, and once negotiated a weapons deal in 4 languages simultaneously. But planning a marriage proposal was somehow more terrifying than all of those combined. You're overthinking this, June said, watching his boss pace the penthouse like a caged tiger. Just take her somewhere nice, get on one knee, say the words. It needs to be perfect. Boss, she threatened a gang leader with TikTok. She doesn't need perfect. She needs authentic. Min Jae stopped pacing. What if she says no? Then you've successfully found the one person in Seoul who isn't afraid of you, which is honestly impressive. June pulled out his phone. Also, Mrs. Choi has called me 6 times today, asking if you've completed the mission. Your mother's words, not mine. My mother knows. Your mother orchestrated this. Where do you think I got the ring? Min Jae looked at the velvet box on his coffee table. A family heirloom his mother had apparently been hiding for this exact moment. His grandmother's ring, platinum with a single diamond, elegant and understated. Nothing like the flashy jewelry some of his associates wore, but somehow exactly right for Nia. She's going to think I'm rushing this, Min Jae said. We've only been together 2 weeks, 3 weeks tomorrow, and you've spent every day together. That's like 3 months in normal relationship time. June stood up, straightening his jacket. Look, you survived your father's death, gang wars, and Park Hwan. You can survive asking a woman who loves you to marry you. How do you know she loves me? Boss. She walked into a warehouse full of armed men for you. She learned Korean curse words from our crew. She tolerates your mother's wedding planning. That's not tolerance. That's love. Nia was expecting dinner. Maybe another family gathering where Mrs. Choi would present more wedding magazines despite them not being engaged. What she wasn't expecting was June picking her up at sunset and driving her to the Han River, where a private boat waited. Is this another meet the crew situation? She asked suspiciously. Because last time I ended up learning illegal gambling strategies. No crew tonight, June said. And was that nervousness in his voice? Just enjoy the evening. The boat was simple but elegant. String lights, comfortable seating, and Min Jae standing at the railing looking like he'd rather face another assassination attempt than whatever was about to happen. You look terrified, Nia observed, stepping aboard. Should I be worried? No. Yes. Maybe. Min Jae ran a hand through his hair. A gesture she'd learned meant he was deeply uncomfortable. I'm not good at this. At what? Boats? Romance? Complete sentences? All of the above. The boat started moving, gliding across the water as Seoul's skyline lit up around them. A glittering backdrop that looked like someone had scattered diamonds across the horizon. It was breathtaking, and Nia felt her suspicions growing. Min Jae, what's going on? He took a deep breath, and for a moment, the crime boss disappeared completely. What remained was just a man, nervous, hopeful, vulnerable in a way that made Nia's chest ache. 3 weeks ago, you walked into my life wearing a yellow dress and an attitude that should have come with a warning label, he started. You insulted my tie, threatened a gang leader with social media, and somehow convinced my crew that you're the most terrifying person they've ever met. This better be going somewhere good, Nia said, but her voice shook slightly. You made me laugh. Real laughter, not the corporate version I use for meetings. You met my mother and survived. You walked into danger to protect me. You looked at everything I am, the violence, the empire, the blood on my hands, and decided I was worth staying for. You pulled out the velvet box, and Nia's breath caught. I'm not good at romance. I'm better at strategy and intimidation. But I know 3 things with absolute certainty. He opened the box, revealing the ring. 1. I love you more than I thought I could love anything. 2. I want to spend the rest of my life making you laugh and buying you throw pillows for our excessively minimalist apartment. And 3. My mother will never forgive me if I don't make this official before she plans an entire wedding without our consent. Despite the tears already forming, Nia laughed. Did you just propose because of your mother? I'm proposing because the thought of existing without you feels like drowning. The mother thing is just additional motivation. He took a shaky breath. Nia Thompson, will you marry me? Will you deal with my dramatic tendencies and my overprotective nature and my family's complete lack of boundaries? Will you be my partner in this complicated, dangerous, beautiful mess we're building? Nia looked at the ring, vintage, elegant, perfect. She looked at Min Jae, tattoos and tailored suit and eyes that held an entire universe of hope and fear. She thought about Atlanta, her vice principal job, her carefully planned life that had never included falling in love with a Korean crime boss. And she realized none of that mattered. Yes, she said, and watched his whole body sag with relief. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll deal with your brooding and your mother's wedding magazines and the fact that your idea of date night involves underground gambling dens. Min Jae slid the ring on her finger with shaking hands, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like relief and joy and forever. Around them, Seoul glittered like it was celebrating too. When they finally pulled apart, Min Jae was actually smiling. That full, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. My mother's going to be insufferable about this, he said. Your mother orchestrated this, didn't she? The ring was her idea. The boat was June's. The words were mine. The words were good. Nia admired the ring on her finger, feeling the weight of it. Not heavy, just present. Real. Though you really led with "I'm not good at romance," and then delivered a whole romantic speech. I had notes. June made me practice. You practiced. 5 times. He has video evidence for blackmail purposes. Nia laughed so hard she cried, and Min Jae held her through it, his arms steady and sure. Somewhere in the city, his crew was probably celebrating. Mrs. Choi was definitely already calling vendors. June was most certainly sending the practice video to everyone they knew. But here on this boat, it was just them, a crime boss and a vice principal, finding love in the most unexpected place. So, Min Jae said softly, "How do you feel about spring weddings?" My mother suggests cherry blossoms. Your mother suggested that 3 days after we met. She's a forward thinker. She's a menace. Nia kissed him again, soft and sweet. But yeah, spring sounds perfect. And in that moment, with Seoul sparkling around them and forever stretching ahead, everything was. 3 months later, Nia stood in front of a full-length mirror in a hanbok that probably cost more than her yearly salary, while Mrs. Choi circled her like a fashion-obsessed drone, adjusting every fold with the precision of a surgeon. "Perfect," Mrs. Choi declared. "You look like a queen. My son looks like he might vomit from nerves, but you look perfect." That's reassuring. Nia caught her reflection. The traditional wedding hanbok was stunning, deep red and gold, embroidered with symbols she'd spent weeks learning the meaning of. Her locks were styled in an elegant updo that had taken 3 YouTube tutorials and Hannah's surprisingly gentle hands to achieve. Behind her, Keisha sat in a chair, video calling from Atlanta, because she'd refused to miss this despite the 14-hour time difference. "Girl, you're really doing this. Marrying a whole mob boss. In Korea, your mama would die." "My mama already died when I told her," Nia corrected. Then she came back to life and demanded wedding photos. "She's calling it her pray for my daughter arc." "I'm calling it your bad decisions lead to good stories arc," Keisha said. "But you look happy. Terrifyingly happy." She was happy. Deliriously, unexpectedly, complicated but real happy. The past 3 months had been chaos. Planning a wedding that merged American and Korean traditions while Mrs. Choi invited people Nia was 90% sure were involved in illegal activities. There had been tense negotiations with Nia's school board about taking a year's leave of absence. There had been even tenser negotiations with immigration lawyers about visas and dual residency. And there had been Min Jae every single day learning to be a partner instead of a protector, letting her in past all those carefully constructed walls. 5 minutes. June appeared in the doorway, looking sharp in his suit and oddly emotional. "Boss is ready." "Well, not ready. He's having a moment. But the guests are seated, and Mrs. Choi says if we don't start soon, she's dragging him down the aisle herself." Is he okay? Nia asked, suddenly worried. He's terrified you'll realize what you're signing up for and run. June smiled softly. I told him you already know what you're signing up for and you're still here, which means you're either crazy or perfect for him. Both, Nia, Keisha, and Mrs. Choi said simultaneously. The wedding venue was a traditional Korean garden that looked like something out of a historical drama. Cherry blossoms in full bloom, a small pavilion decorated with silken flowers, and exactly 300 guests that Mrs. Choi had somehow compressed from her original 800. Nia recognized faces from Min Jae's crew mixed with relatives she'd met at various family dinners. Mr. Yang was crying already. Hannah was filming everything. Mrs. Song had brought more cookies, because apparently even weddings needed homemade baked goods from money laundering operations. And then there was Min Jae. He stood at the altar in traditional Korean wedding attire, looking simultaneously terrified and awestruck. The dragon tattoo on his neck peeked out from his collar, a visible reminder of who he was, what he'd done, the empire he commanded. But his eyes held something softer, something that was just hers. The ceremony was a blur, traditional bows, the exchange of cups, words in Korean and English that promised forever despite all the reasons forever seemed impossible. Nia felt tears streaming down her face when Min Jae's voice cracked, saying his vows. I promise to protect you, he said in English, his accent thick with emotion. To love you, to let you buy as many throw pillows as you want for our apartment, to try very hard not to overthink everything, and to remind you every day that choosing me was not a mistake, even though statistically, marrying a crime lord seems like a questionable life choice. The crowd laughed, actual laughter in the middle of a traditional ceremony. Mrs. Choi looked scandalized but proud. I promise, Nia replied, her voice steady despite the tears, to call you out when you're being dramatic, to tolerate your mother's wedding magazine addiction that apparently doesn't end at the actual wedding, to love you through the complicated, dangerous, beautiful mess we're building, and to remind you that you're more than your empire. You're the man who cried at my proposal answer and practices romantic speeches with his second in command. June wiped his eyes. Several crew members were actively sobbing. When they finally kissed, the garden erupted in cheers that probably violated several noise ordinances. Min Jae held her like she was the most precious thing in his dangerous world, and Nia kissed him back like he was her home. Complicated, unexpected, perfect. The reception was controlled chaos. Mrs. Choi had orchestrated everything with military precision. Food stations featuring both Korean and Southern American cuisine, bulgogi, and fried chicken existed on the same table, which Nia considered a diplomatic victory. A DJ who somehow blended K-pop with Atlanta hip-hop, and an open bar that was definitely going to result in questionable decisions. Speech. Speech. The crowd chanted. Min Jae stood reluctantly, pulling Nia up with him. He looked at the gathering, his crew, his family, the empire he'd inherited, and the woman who'd somehow decided all of it was worth staying for. I'm not good at speeches, he started, and the crowd laughed because they'd all heard this before. But I've learned that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you don't plan for. 3 months ago, I sat in a restaurant expecting another disappointing blind date. Instead, I met a woman who insulted my Thai, threatened to gang lord with social media, and somehow convinced my mother she was suitable daughter-in-law material. I am very convincing, Mrs. Choi yelled from her table. She is very convincing, Min Jae agreed. Nia, you walked into my life like a natural disaster. Beautiful, unstoppable, leaving chaos and color in your wake. You made me laugh. You made me feel. You made me believe I could be more than what my father built me to be. His voice cracked. So thank you for choosing me, for staying, for being brave enough to love someone who comes with significantly more baggage than the average person. And tattoos, June added helpfully. Don't forget the tattoos. And tattoos, Min Jae agreed. To my wife, the strongest, smartest, most terrifying person I've ever met. I love you. The crowd erupted. Nia pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like forever and soju. Later, much later, after the dancing and the toasts and Mrs. Choi's 17-minute speech about how she'd orchestrated everything she had, Min Jae and Nia stood on a balcony overlooking Seoul. So, Nia said, leaning against him, We really did this. Got married. You're stuck with me now. Best decision I've ever made. Min-jae's arms wrapped around her waist. Second best was listening to my mother about that 20th blind date. Don't tell her that. She'll never let us forget it. She already has it embroidered on throw pillows. June showed me the drafts. Nia laughed. That full, genuine laugh that Min-jae had become addicted to. Our life is going to be insane. Absolutely. Your mother is going to meddle constantly. Without question, your crew is going to treat our home like a secondary office. Already happening. And I'm going to have to explain to my students back home that I'm married a Korean crime boss, and that's why I'm taking a year off. They'll understand. Teenagers appreciate authentic chaos. Nia turned in his arms, looking up at this man, her husband, who'd somehow become her entire world in 3 months. I love you, Min-jae. Even though you're dramatic and overprotective and your apartment needed serious interior design intervention. Our apartment, he corrected, and I love you, even though you're stubborn and reckless and have absolutely no respect for appropriate security measures. They kissed as Seoul glittered around them, a city of light and shadow, danger and beauty, exactly like the life they were building together. Somewhere below, June was probably already planning their security detail for the honeymoon. Mrs. Choi was definitely calling vendors about future grandchildren. The empire continued spinning, deals were made, territories were managed, and life went on. But here, on this balcony, it was just them, a crime lord and a vice principal. A blind date that changed everything. A love story that shouldn't have worked, but did anyway, because sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never see coming. Ready for forever? Min-jae asked softly. Nia smiled. Bright, fearless, beautiful. Baby, I flew 13 hours for one blind date. Forever is nothing. And they kissed again, sealing a promise made in chaos, bound by love, and witnessed by a city that held all their tomorrows. If you believe love shows up in the most unexpected places, even in underground gambling dens and terrible blind dates, hit that subscribe button. Only lonely trolls who've given up on finding their person won't. Comment, love wins, if you're not siding with Park Hwang and his bitter, romance-hating energy. And let me know, would you have said yes to that boat proposal, or would the crime lord thing be a deal breaker? Drop your thoughts below, because sometimes the craziest love stories are the realest ones. The end.